Good day, everyone. I'm Marinalila Bagala, one of the reporters from Group 5, and our lesson for today is Human Capital, Education and Health in Economic Development. So, next. So, before we proceed to the discussion proper, let me introduce first our group members. So, these are the group members of Group 5. Next. Next. So now let's proceed to the objectives. So the objectives of our lesson is first is to identify the central roles of education and health. Next is to learn the human capital approach on investing in education and health. Next is to analyze the gender gap in education and health. And last is to understand the educational systems and development. So next. So the first one is the central roles of education and health. So education and health are basic objectives of development. So this just means that education and health are the two things that we want to achieve to be able to improve the lives of the individuals and the society and also to attain development. So this is why they are called the basic objectives of development. So next, health is central to well-being and education is essential for a satisfying and rewarding life. So we can say that health is central to well-being in a way that our well-being is centralized to our health. It depends on our health if we are healthy or unhealthy. So it allows individuals to live active and it also allows individuals to live free from illness. So we can say that education is essential for a satisfying and rewarding life in a way that education provides us knowledge and skills that is helpful for our personal and professional growth. So when we already achieve our personal and professional growth, we can now uh, be successfully or we can now be academically successful. So after that, we can now have a satisfying and rewarding life. So education plays a key role in the ability of a developing country to absorb modern technology. So yung education is key role siya sa pag-absorb ng modern technology in a way that, 'di ba nga, tulad nung sabi ko, no, na yung education is nagpo-provide sa atin ng mga knowledge and ng mga skill. So, ibig sabihin nito, kung well-educated yung workforce, ibig sabihin makakapag-adapt sila, matututo sila, at makakapag-implement sila ng new technologies na key role siya sa the developing country. So next slide. So health is a prerequisite for increases in productivity and successful education relies on adequate health as well. So when we say prerequisite in Tagalog, ito yung unang kailangan. No, ibig sabihin yung health ay isa sa unang kailangan para ma-increase yung productivity natin. So in economics, productivity refers to how much output can be produced with a given set of inputs. So good health ay inaalaw nito yung individuals para makapag-perform ng task efficiently, makapag-focus, and of course, para masustain yung energy level, which can influence our productivity. So on the other hand naman, successful education relies on adequate health as well. So ibig sabihin na yung education is nagre-rely din sa health. In what way? Kasi 'di ba sa health, let's say na if a student has a good health, no? Ay makakapag-attend sila ng school regularly, mababawasan yung mga absences nila, and makakapag-engage sila actively sa learning. In that way, ma-achieve nila yung academic success. So, without good health, no, yung ability to learn, na makapag-retain ng information, and yung makapag-perform effectively is makakompromise. So, thus, both health and education can also be seen as vital components of growth and development as inputs to the aggregate production function. Excuse me. So, yung aggregate production function ito yung pagdidescribe ng relationship between inputs and outputs of an economy. Typically, included dito yung labor, yung capital, and yung technology. So, excuse me, yung health and education, na-enhance nito yung quality ng ating productivity or yung quality ng labor. Yung healthy workers ay pro- productive. Magiging productive, magkakaroon ng onting absences, and makakapag-work for longer periods. So, yung good health din is mare-reduce niya yung healthcare cost and yung economic burden sa mga disease. So, next naman yung education, may improve niya yung human capital dahil nga tulad ng sabi ko, 'di ba? With education makakapag gain tayo ng mga knowledge, ng mga skills and competencies. So, with that, malilid tayo sa mga innovative and efficient production processes, higher wages, and better economic outcomes. Next. So now let's look at the connections between health and education naman. So health and education are both forms of human capital. When we say forms of human capital, it is the economic value of the skills, the knowledge, and the experiences possessed by individuals. So they are form of human capital because they significantly influence an individual's productivity and economic potential. So, tulad nga nung sabi ko na ang well-educated individual ay makakapag make ng informed health choices. Um, Tapos, capable din sila para sa educational opportunities. And yung pag invest sa mga areas na to ay may enhance yung economic growth natin at may improve yung quality of life natin. So next naman is the dual impacts of effects of health spending on the effectiveness of the educational system and vice versa. So yung effects sa health spending sa educational system, yung better healthcare, mare-reduce niya nga yung frequency or yung severity of illnesses among students. Ibig sabihin, with good health, no, mababawasan yung pagkakasakit ng mga student na maglilid sa higher attendance rate. Ibig sabihin kung hindi sakitin yung mga students, ibig sabihin maraming students ang papasok. So investments in health can also improve the well-being of teachers. So, hindi lang ang students, syempre, yung affected kapag nag invest sa health. Of course, yung mga health din ng teachers. So, yung health spending then often includes programs that teach students about hygiene, nutrition, and physical activity. So, the knowledge from that contributes to creating a healthier school environment conducive to learning. So, yung effects naman ng educational spending sa health is yung education, may interest niya yung health literacy ng mga estudyante, which enables individuals to make informed decisions about their health, to understand medical instructions, and to adhere to treatment plans. Education then is linked to better job opportunities and higher incomes, which in turn improve access to healthcare services and healthy living conditions. So, individuals with higher education levels are more likely to have jobs that offer health insurance, reducing the financial barriers to accessing health care. So, yung mga, kung mapapansin naman natin, yung may mga higher education levels kapag nagkakatrabaho sila, no, yung mga job na meron sila ay nag-offer ng health insurance. So last is the fundamental fact that when we speak of investing in a person's health and investing in a person's education, we are after all talking about the same person. So tulad nga nung sabi ko na uh, ang health and education ay interconnected with each other. So kapag nag-invest ka daw sa education and health, we are talking about the same person. Health and education are like two sides of the coin when it comes to a person's overall development. Hindi pwedeng health lang mag invest hindi pwedeng education lang mag invest. So, they are interconnected with each other. So, yung good health, na-enhance niya yung learning capacity ng isang tao. While education naman, napopromote niya yung better health decisions. So, next po. So, greater health capital may improve the return to investments in education. So, tulad lang to ng sabi ko kanina, na because of health, we can say that the investments on education are worth it because it may improve the return of those investments. Ibig sabihin, kung ano yung investment sa education is babalik din, magre-return din. Why? Uh, Una, yung free education, no? 'Di ba? Yung investment sa education, masasabi natin na ito yung free education kung saan na ginagamit natin ngayon. So, let's say na lahat ng students na may access sa free education ay well or healthy and has a good health. Ibig sabihin nito, yung investment doon sa free education na yun ay babalik din sa kanila because they can be successful academically nga. So on the other hand naman, greater education capital may improve the return to investments in health. Ganun din. Ibig sabihin, yung investment sa health naman is worth it din. Kasi nga, babalik din yun. No? So, connected din to sa access to free education. So, yung school nga, diba, tinuturuan tayo ng mga health literacy, na nag tumutulong sa atin para makaintindi tayo ng mga medical instructions, ng mga malaman natin kung ano-ano yung mga sakit at kung paano ito maiwasan. Tapos, natuturuan din tayo nitong mag-decide about our health. So, with these educated individuals being knowledgeable enough about health, yung health investments, like yung investments sa PhilHealth, ay babalik. So, next po. So, health and education levels are much higher in high-income countries. When we say high-income countries, ito yung mga developed countries. So, ibig sabihin dito na yung health and education levels sa mga developed countries ay much higher, no? Sa countries like United States. Ganyan. So, next naman, higher productivity and incomes are possible. Number one, with higher income, dahil syempre kapag may higher income ka, you will be able to produce more. Next is with greater health and education, di ba? Ito yung dalawa na to, is the things that are connected with productivity. Next po. So, people will spend more on human capital when income is higher. So, dito po, no, na syempre, kung ang income mo is mataas, makakapag-spend more kasi human capital. Ano ba yung human capital? Yung health and yung education. Syempre, if your income is high, you are capable enough to spend on human capital. Next, if we were able to raise incomes without a large improvement in health and education, we could not count on that income increase being used to adequately invest in children's education and health. Dito sinasabi naman na if we were able to raise income, ibig sabihin, nakakapag-raise tayo ng income. However, wala pa ring large improvement sa health and education. Sabi dito, we could not count on that income increase. Ibig sabihin, hindi pwedeng umasa lang tayo sa income increase na yon. Yes, nag-increase nga yung income. However, wala namang large improvement sa health and education. Ibig sabihin, yung income na tumaas is babalik lang din doon. Parang wala lang din siya. So, next po. So, now, let's proceed naman sa investing in education and health, the human capital approach. So, human capital is the term economists often use for education, health, and other human capacities that can raise productivity when increased. So, yung human capital, it is perceived to increase productivity and profitability. So, ibig sabihin, the more investment on health and education, the chances of its productivity and success became higher. So, yung human capital approach naman, this is where the analysis of investments in health and education is unified. So yung human capital approach, it is the idea of humans increasing their productivity and efficiency through a greater focus and on education and training. So, yung pag-invest sa human capital ay mag-aalaw sa uh, growth, no? Na may measure dito yung abilities, yung values, and yung skill set. So, with that, may increase yung productivity and in time, yung revenue, no, yung income, no? So, next. So, analogy to conventional investments in physical capital. So, first one is the initial investment. Of course, una, mag-i-invest ka, initial investment. Next, syempre, mag-expect ka sa higher future income. No? If you invest, malamang mag-look forward ka sa higher future income mula dun sa ininvest mo. And the last one is the rate of returns can be reduced and compared with other investments returns. Let's say na you already achieve a higher income. Tapos, syempre, of course, you'll now expect for the rate of returns. Kasi when we say rate of returns, ito yung uh, how much yung kinita mo dun sa investment mo. Ibig sabihin nito, magkano yung bumalik sa'yo mula dun sa ininvest mo. So, yun yung rate of returns. Next po. So, ito naman is a figure of age earnings profiles by level of education in Venezuela. So, yung chart, pinapakita dito yung incomes na nagba-vary over the life cycle of for people with various levels of education. So, kung mapapansin natin, no, na yung may university, yung may higher levels of education, which is the university, ay nag-start ng full-time work at a later age. Ibig sabihin, ayan, kung makikita po natin, 25 years old siya, nagtrabaho sila. Pero, kung makikita natin na yung income nila is na-outpace nila yung ibang mga level, no? Level of education. Ibig sabihin nito na malaki yung influence ng education sa income or sa earnings. So, next po. So, ito naman is a table of the sample rates of return to investment in education by level of education, country, type, and regions. So, tulad nga ng sabi ko, diba, yung rates of return, ito yung how much yung bumalik mula sa investment mo. So, kung makikita natin yung first three columns ng table is yung social rate of return. So, this is found by including the amount of public subsidy for the individual's education as part of the direct cost. So, mapapansin natin na yung higher rates of returns for developing country ay nagre-reflect dun yung income differential between those with more and less schooling na greater sa average ng developed countries. Next po. So, initial investments in health or education lead to a stream of higher future income. So, when we say nga no, when we are investing in health and education, diba, we are talking about a same person. So, kung makapag-invest ka both sa education and sa health ng isang tao, malaki yung possibility na magli-lead to sa higher future income na dahil nga nabuboost ng education and ng health yung productivity ng isang tao. So, basic human capital approach focuses on their indirect ability to increase well-being by increasing income. So now, we can answer how can we invest in education in a human capital approach. So as stated here, ang human capital approach ay nagfo-focus sa indirect ability ng pag-increase ng well-being sa pamamagitan ng pag-increase ng income. So, ano yung indirect ability na yon, no? Yung indirect ability na yon, yun yung pag-invest sa education and health. So, just like what I've said, na yung investments, educations, and health ay nakapag-lead nga sa stream of higher future income. With that, yung well-being din ng isang tao ay mag-increase because of the increase of income. So higher income will lead you to greater things ahead, and that's why it will increase our well-being. Next po. So, child labor is a widespread problem in developing countries. So, yung problem na to, yung child labor, is usually problem siya ng mga developing countries. No? Sa labor, when children under age 15 work, their labor time disrupts their schooling and in a majority of cases, prevents them from attending school altogether. So, I know that we are all familiar with child labor naman. So, yung child labor, ito yung paggagamit ng mga children sa mga workforce. So, ibig sabihin, yung mga trabahador ay yung mga bata. So, often, nagli-lead to sa economic necessity and impoverished families. Na nare-reduce nito yung education opportunities ng mga bata. Dahil nga, dapat, di ba, nag-aaral lang sila, imbes na mag-aaral sila, is nagtatrabaho sila. Na dapat naman, yung mga magulang nila yung nagtatrabaho. No? And also, na napapataas din nito yung poverty cycles natin. Kasi nga, yes, magkakaroon tayo ng short-term financial relief. However, hindi naman ba habang araw dapat sa bata tayo aasa dahil nga ang dapat mag-provide sa pamilya ay ang magulang. So, because of child labor, no, yung long-term negative impacts, nagkakaroon tayo ng long-term negative impacts sa economic growth natin and sa social progress natin. So, the next topic will be discussed by my co-reporter, Ms. Labrador.
Thank you, Ms. Labagala. My name is Sini Joyce Labrador, and I'm going to discuss the gender gap and the political economy of educational supply and demand. Young females receive less education than young males in most low-income developing countries. Figure 8.4 shows that in most regions, girls still lag behind boys. In rural areas of certain countries, girls may be experienced to certain countries to help with household chores or be married off at a young age, limiting their opportunities for education. Overall, this imbalance in education opportunities reinforces gender inequalities and hinders the socio-economic development of these communities. Next slide. Large majorities of illiterate people and those who have been unable to attend school around the developing world are female. The gender gap is especially great in at least developed developed countries in Africa, where female literacy rates can be less than half that of men in countries such as Nigeria, Mali, and Benin. The gap is also relatively large in South Asia. In India, the adult female literacy rate is just 47.8, which is just 65% of male rate. The female youth literacy rate is 67.7. That was the 80% of the male youth literacy rate. In Pakistan, the adult female literacy rate is just 36%, and only 57% of the male rate is the male rate. Empirical evidence shows that educational discrimination against women hinders economic development, in addition to reinforcing social inequality. Next po. Closing the educational gender gap by expanding educational opportunities for women, a key plank of the Millennium Development Goals, is economically desirable for at least three reasons. So what are those three reasons? Investing, number one, the rate of return on women's education is higher than that on men in most developing countries. Excuse me. Number two, increasing women's education results in greater labor force participation, later marriage, lower fertility, and greatly improved child health and nutrition. Last, any significant improvement in women's role and status via education can have an important impact on breaking the vicious circle of poverty and inadequate schooling. Uh, this simply means that investing in women's education yields higher returns in most developing countries. Excuse me, compared to men's education. Not only not only does it enhance women's productivity in the workplace, but it also leads to increased labor force participation, delayed marriage, reduced fertility rates, and improved child health and nutrition. Since women often bear the brunt of poverty, empowering them through education can play a crucial role in breaking the cycle of poverty and inadequate schooling. Next po. The gender gap discrimination in education and health and gender. Girls also face discrimination in healthcare in many developing countries. Girls face discrimination in accessing healthcare. Studies from the South Asia revealed bias where families are more inclined to seek medical treatment for sick boys over girls. Additionally, women frequently encounter barriers to reproductive rights, both through legal restrictions and societal norms. This pervasive issue aligns with the concept of multiple equilibria tied to entrenched social norms or convections, perpetuating gender disparities in health and rights. Next po. Consequences of gender bias in health and education. Studies from around the developing world consistently shows that expansion of the basic education of girls earns among the very highest of return of any investment, much larger, for example, the most public infrastructure projects. One estimate is that the global cost of failing to educate girls is about $92 billion a year. Second, education of girls has also been shown to be one of the most cost-effective means of improving local health standards. Studies by the United Nations, the World Bank, and the other agencies have concluded that social benefits alone of increased education of girls is more than sufficient to cover its cost even before the consideration of the added earning power this education would bring. Inferior education and healthcare access for girls shows the interlinked nature of economic incentives and the cultural settings. In many parts of Asia, a boy provides future economic benefits such as support of parents in their old age and possible receipt of a dowry upon marriage. Also, often continues to work on the farm into adulthood, while a girl, in contrast, may require a dowry upon marriage, often a young age, and will then move to the village of her husband's family, becoming responsible and welfare of her husband's parents rather than her own. Next po. As we can see in this graph, it shows that increase in family income do not automatically result in improved health status or educational attainment. Higher income cannot be expected to necessarily lead to higher education and health. Next po. Educational systems and development. There are two fundamental economic processes: the interaction between economically motivated demands and politically responsive supplies in determining how many quality school spaces are provided, who gets access to these places, and what kind of instructions they receive. Much of the literature of the public decisions about education and economic development in general, and education and employment in particular, revolves around two fundamentals economic processes. This includes the interaction between Uh, for example of this fundamental economic processes, in marketing-driven systems, access to the quality of education may be more closely tied to the ability to pay for private schooling or access to well-funded public schools in affluent areas. In contrast, government government interventions such as funding formulas and educational policies aim to mitigate disparities in access and ensure equitable distribution of resources. Overall, the provision of quality school places reflects a dynamic interplay between economic demand for education and political decisions. Uh, Next, the important distinction between social and private benefits and costs of different levels of education and implication of these differentials for educational investment strategies. Therefore, educational investment strategies should aim to strike a balance between the promoting individual opportunities and fostering broader societal development. This might involve the targeted interventions to address marketing failures, such as providing subsidies for disadvantaged uh, students or investing in education programs that address critical societal needs by considering the full spectrum of private and social benefits and cost. Policymakers can be developed by more effective strategies to promote equitable access to quality education and drive sustainable economic and social progress. Next po. The political economy of educational supply and demand, the relationship between employment opportunities and educational demands. The amount of schooling received by an individual, although affected by many non-market factors, can be regarded as largely determined by demand and supply, like any other commodity or service. On the demand side, the two principal influences on the amount of schooling decide are the private benefits of education and the educational cost. First, we will discuss the private benefits of education. This refers to the increased earning potential and improved job prospects that come with higher level of education. Individuals and families often prioritize education as means to secure better economic opportunities in the future. The expectation of higher income in the modern sector, which typically requires higher levels of education, serves as a powerful incentive for individuals to pursue educations. This aspect of demand is driven by the desire to enhance personal economic well-being and social mobility. Second was the educational costs, both direct and indirect, that the students or a family must bear. This encompasses both direct expenses such as tuition fees, textbooks, and transportations as well as indirect costs such as the opportunity cost of time spent in education rather than in the workforce. While in the supply side, uh, the quantity of school places at the primary, secondary, and university levels is determined largely by political processes often unrelated to economic criteria. Indeed, the allocations of the school places at the various education levels is heavily influenced by political processes. It often disconnected from purely economic considerations. In many developing countries, there's a growing demand for increased access to education at all levels, driven by factors such as population, growth, urbanizing, and rising aspirations for higher education. Given mounting political pressure throughout the developing world for greater numbers of school places at higher levels, we can for convenience assume that the public supply of these places is fixed by the level of the government educational expenditures. The public school supplies, including those at the primary, secondary, and university levels, is typically determined by the government educational expenditures. However, these expenditures are often subject to political priorities budget constraints, and competing demands for resources. As a result, the allocation of school places may not always align with purely economic criteria such as maximizing the social or economic benefits of education. Next po. The amount of schooling demanded that is sufficient to qualify an individual for modern sectors jobs appear to be related to determine by the combined influence of four variables. First, the wage or income differential. The wage gap between the individuals with different levels of education serves as a powerful incentives of education serves as a powerful for educationals to pursue educational levels of schooling. Higher education often leads to higher paying jobs in the modern sector, which offer better opportunities for career advancement and financial stability. Second, the probability of success in finding modern sector employment. The likelihood of securing modern sector employment is another crucial factor influencing the demand for education. Individuals assess their prospects of finding suitable jobs based on their level of education, skills, and market demand. Higher levels of education typically correlate with higher employability and lower risk of unemployment, motivating individuals to invest in further education. Third, the direct private cost of education. This includes expenses such as tuition fees, textbooks, uniforms, and transportation. The affordability of education plays a significant role in shaping individuals' decisions about pursuing schooling. High costs may deter individuals, particularly those from low-income backgrounds, from accessing or completing higher levels of education. Fourth, the indirect or opportunity cost of education. Uh, this refers to the foregone earnings that individuals incur while investing time and effort in education rather than working. The longer the duration of education and the higher the level of schooling, the greater the opportunity cost involved. Individuals must weigh the potential long-term benefits of education against the immediate income they could earn by entering the workforce earlier. Uh, Together, these variables interact to determine the optimal level of schooling demanded by individuals seeking modern sector employment. Policymakers and education planners need to consider the factors when designing strategies to promote access to education, address barriers to enrollment, and retentions for us to have the opportunities aligned with the evolving needs of the labor market. Next po. The modern traditional or urban-rural wage gap is of the magnitude of, say, 100% for secondary versus the primary school graduates. The rate of increase in modern sector employment opportunities for primary school dropouts is lower than the rate that which such individuals enter the labor force. The same may be true at the secondary level and even the university level in countries such as India, Mexico, Egypt, Pakistan, Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya. Next po. Employers facing an excess applicants tends to select by level of education. They will choose candidates with secondary rather than primary education, even though there are the satisfactory jobs performing may require no more than a primary education. Governments supported by the political pressure of the educated tend to blind the going wage to the level of educational attainment of job holders rather than the minimum educational qualification required for the job. Next po. Next slide po. Last, school fees decline at the university level as the state bears a larger proportion of the college students' cost. Next, the quantity of higher education demand for the formal sector to be substantial. The anticipated private benefits of more schooling would be large compared to the alternative of little schooling, while the direct and indirect private educational costs are relatively low and the demand spirals upward over time. These dynamics contribute the substantial demand for higher education in the formal sector, particularly in economies where the benefits of education are perceived to be the higher relative for the cost. Policymakers and educational institutions play a crucial role in ensuring that the higher education remains accessible, affordable, and aligned with the evolving needs of the formal sector or labor market, thereby fostering economic growth and development. Next po. The next topic will be discussed by my group mate Rachel.
Thank you, Ms. Labrador. Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Javier, and I'll be discussing the social versus private benefits and the cost of education, as well the involvement of education as one of the factors for the cost of immigration and poverty. Typically, in developing countries, the private cost of education increase rapidly as students climb the educational ladder, while social cost of education increase more slowly or even decline. Private cost of education is the cost that accrue to an individual economic unit o yung nagbabayad ng mga educational cost ay yung mismong individual. While yung social cost of education is the opportunity cost that is given to the society by the government. Ito yung tinatawag natin na free education by the government, kung saan ang government ang nagbabayad sa education ng isang individual. Next slide po. Sa figure 8.6a, the figure shows that the expected private returns grow much faster rate than private costs for a reason that students climb the educational ladder, which means na dahil sa private cost of education ay mas malaki yung natatanggap na investment sa education dahil mas nag invest yung mga estudyante sa pag-a-attain ng higher education. While yung figure 8.6b na nasa baba ay makikita natin yung social benefits ay tumataas, reflecting the improved levels of productivity na nagagaling sa early years of schooling. In contrast, yung social cost curve has a slow rate of growth for early years of schooling and then much more rapid growth for higher levels of education. Kung sa figure 8.6a, pinapakita ang mabilis na pagtaas ng investments sa kanang cost, sa figure 8.6b naman, mabilis yung benefits sa early years of schooling bago ito bumagat. Dahil karamihan nakabilang sa first phase o yung mga nakakatanggap ng basic education ay yung mga farmers and self-employed kung saan mas focus nila yung mga pag-atay ng basic education kaysa sa pag-invest sa higher education. Kaya karamihan sa kanila hindi nakakatanggap ng higher education and that leads to a negative sa social rate of investment. Habang yung cost naman ay biglang tumaas kaysa sa benefits kasi post-primary education sa developing countries ay financially supported ng gobyerno. Kaya rapid yung pagtaas ng social cost pagdating sa higher education. Next slide po. Kaya nagkakaroon ng divergence pagdating sa social and private benefits and costs ay dahil inappropriate public and private policies with regard with wage differentials, educational selectivity, and the pricing of educational services. Ito yung dahilan kung bakit nagkaroon ng unemployment sa bansa. As a result, private calculation of the value of education exceeds its social value, which must take account of unemployment. Basic education, which has been steadily approaching the target of universal primary school enrollment, has made great contributions to development, broadly conceived. Basic education has brought development to the country by providing a more productive labor force, by providing it with increased knowledge and skills, providing widespread employment and income earning opportunities for teachers, schools, and construction workers, creating a class of educated leaders to vacancies left by departing expatriates or otherwise vacant or prospect positions in government services, public corporation, private domestic and foreign business, and professionals. And last is providing the kind of training and education that will promote literacy and basic skills, while encouraging modern attitudes on the part of diverse segments of the population. Next slide po. The foregoing analysis of forces operating for over-education in developing countries should not lead us to despair over the possibility of pursuing development through greater education. By using the Lorentz curve, we can determine the distribution of education. In the figure, it has shown that the x-axis is the cumulative proportion of the population and the cumulative proportion of the years of schooling on the y-axis. In using the Lorentz curve, the closer the curve is to the 45-degree line or yung line na naghahati sa graph, mas equal yung distribution ng education. Makikita natin sa left side yung Lorentz curve for India, and makikita naman natin sa right side yung Lorentz curve for South Korea. In comparison, mas equal yung distribution ng education sa South Korea kaysa sa India dahil yung Lorentz curve ng South Korea ay mas malapit sa 45-degree line in compare sa India. Para ma-explain kung bakit hindi equal yung distribution of education sa India, we can use the Gini coefficient. It is a tool that measures the statistical dispersion used to represent income inequality, wealth inequality, or consumption inequality sa loob ng isang bansa or ng social group. Sa India, India had a much more educational inequality as measured by the educational Gini na makikita mo sa baba ng graph na nakalagay na yung Gini ng India ay 0.69 in compare sa South Korea na may Gini of 0.22. Plotting the Gini coefficient for education against average years of education. So pag gagamitin yung Gini coefficient, gagamitin natin yung average years of education pagdating sa distribution of education. Next slide po. Figure 8.7 shows the Gini coefficient for education in 85 countries. The figure shows that there is no inverted U curve for education. Also, that educational inequality tends to fall as average years of education in the population rises, in which na kapag daw mas marami yung naka-receive ng higher education, tumataas yung distribution ng knowledge and skills sa population that resulted sa pagtaas ng ekonomiya at sa pagbaba ng poverty ng isang bansa. Next slide po. The educational system of many developing nations sometimes act to increase rather than to decrease income inequalities. The private costs of primary education are higher for poor students than for more affluent students, and the expected benefits of lower quality primary education are lower for poor students. As a result of this higher opportunity cost, school attendance and therefore school performance tend to be much lower for children of poor families than for those from higher income backgrounds. This is really compounded by the lower quality of schools attended by the poor, waged by the poor teaching and teacher truancy in inadequate facilities. So, yung sinasabi sa slide na to, now, for examples, is workers who graduate in higher education earned more than those who only finish basic education. This denied the poor para ma-access yung opportunities that high-skilled workers receive. Next slide po. In secondary level, this financial process of eliminating the relatively poor during the first few years of schooling is often compounded by the substantial tuition. Low-income families is unable to afford the tuition of the schools, and even with the government paying the full cost of tuitions, other aspects such as textbooks and uniforms and equipments na kailangan ng estudyante prohibit low-income families to invest in schooling. While sa university level, The government may pay the full cost of tuition and fees and even provide university students with income grants in a form of stipends. However, not everyone enrolled in university that receives stipends belongs to low-income earned families, and the funds the government chooses to pay the school tuitions are the money that low-income families also pays in the form of taxes. Next slide po. Education also plays a crucial role in influencing the rural-urban migration. Individuals with higher level of education choose to migrate to urban areas to earn income and to obtain a modern sector of lower levels of education. This has shown that there is a positive relationship between the educational attainment of an individual and his or her propensity to migrate from rural to urban areas. Aside from rural-urban migration, international migration also happens, wherein education play a crucial role in the international migration of higher level of educated workers. Ito yung tinatawag natin na brain drain, kung saan yung yung mga skilled workers ng isang bansa ay mas pinipili nila magtrabaho sa mas mayayaman na bansa kasi mas marami silang nakukuha na opportunity. Next slide po. Brain drain is the movement of skilled workers from their home country to developed country to work. Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, mas pinipili ng mga individuals that finish higher education na magtrabaho sa ibang bansa dahil sa opportunities na kailang makukuha, tulad lamang ng income. However, the international brain drain has in fact influenced the style and approach of educational systems in the developing world. The brain drain has diverted the attention of the scientists, physicians, architects, engineers, and academics who remain in their homeland for important local problems and goals. These include the development of appropriate technology, the promotion of low-cost preventing healthcare, the construction of low-cost housing, hospitals, schools, and other services facilities, the design and building of functional yet inexpensive labor-intensive roads, bridges, and machinery, the development of relevant university teaching materials, and lastly, the promotion of the problem-oriented research on vital domestic problem issues. Next slide po. In developing nations often have numerous physicians specialized in heart disease, while preventing tropical medicine is considered a second-rate specialty. Architects are concerned with the design of national monuments and modern public buildings, while low-cost housing, schools, and clinics remain an area of remote interest. Economists study pure theory rather than the development of applications. Engineers and scientists concentrate on the newest and most modern electronic equipment, while simple machine tools, basic sanitations and water purifying system, and labor-intensive mechanical process are relegated to the attention of foregoing experts. In many dimensions, the educational system of most developing countries is in need of true going reform. So ito yung mga dahilan, ang pinapakita sa slide na ito yung mga dahilan kung bakit may kung bakit problem yung brain drain. Kasi sa mga developing nations, yung mga yung mga skilled workers nila ay napupunta sa ibang bansa kaya naiiwan yung home country nila ng mga problems or yung parang para makatulong na ma-develop yung country nila. Next slide po. Yun lang po. Salamat po sa inyong pakikinig.